Okay, so in this session we'll be discussing about queues. I told you. So here first we come across something called as process schedulers here. So what do you mean by scheduler? Already we have discussed in the previous session. What is that? In process schedulers are meant to schedule the different processes what are being getting generated in our system. So there will be multiple processes that will be generated in our system. So making sure that these processes are not getting what we call conflicted with each other for different resources or for CPU, we have this concept called as process schedulers. Now, these process schedulers actually how maintain these particular processes means definitely we should require certain queues here. Okay, as we said, if people are standing in a counter of your for buying a ticket for your favorite movie. Okay, so what if people are doing? If people are standing in a queue. Same way here also we require some queues. So these are the three queues which we mostly use in our terminologies in the coming sessions. First one is what we have is job queue. Now what is the main purpose of job queue is nothing but see this is your system, right? This is your system. Your system actually consists of multiple processes. You know, at a time there will be so many different type of processes might be generated like this. Now, these all processes which are with respect to your system will be stored in a job queue. This job queue is just like a pool. This is your job queue. CR, is it available? Are you people able to see what I am writing on the screen? Geeta, can you please respond?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
It's
fine.
visible, sir.
Okay. So here in this particular thing, this is your job queue. Okay. So this job queue is very big in size. This is like, you know, secondary storage device, how we have 1 TB or something like that. In the same way, this job queue is very big. Sorry. And within this, what happens, whichever the process we people are creating it, all these processes will be transmitted to this particular pool. Okay. Why I'm calling this as a pool means it will consist of all the processes. Now processes are again classified into two types. We'll see across. Okay, so this process will have IBO bound process and CPU bound process. That's the reason I'm saying all the processes are dumped in this. What do you mean by IBO process is nothing but most of the time these particular processes will work in IBO devices. Means they will keep on requiring hardware. Like for example, if we have a DO, so DO, what she is going to do, she'll keep on typing, I mean printing the document. So what happens, most of the time that process will be working on that particular device. That is nothing but printer. We are going to keep on printing the different papers related to documentation, maybe some other kind of circulars and all. Okay, so that process whichever is created to print the document, that will be spending most of its time in the printer. So those kind of things comes under IBU. What do you mean the CPU here means this processes will be spending most of the time in your CPU, your main memory, I mean what we call central processing unit, keep on executing. For example, your programs. You people might have written around 50 to 60 Java programs and they do not require external resources. Let us suppose you people have written programs like addition of two numbers, matrix multiplication, matrix addition, transpose of a matrix, and then you people, in this way you people have written some 40 to 50 programs. Now all these programs are comes under CPU bound. Why? They require your CPU to perform the execution. They doesn't require any kind of external resources like IBO devices. Okay, but whereas coming to printing a document, you want to print some thousands of pages. So definitely you need to give it to the printer. Now what will happen? That process will be spending most of the time in printing that particular document. So we'll have a printer here. Printer will have a queue. That is what we call it as a device queue. Every IBO device will have a device queue. So within that, your process will be there and it will keep on printing the pages. Okay. But whereas coming to the programs, simple programs which we people have written using C, C++, Java, that doesn't require any kind of IBO resources. Automatically, it will be executing most of the time it will spend in CPU. So that is what been explained in this particular thing. So here, whatever the processes we do have, all these processes are actually initially there is no differentiation. All these processes will come up and they will be stored in this particular job queue. Now from this job queue, okay, the scheduler will select a few. How it selects, we don't know. And that may be a collection of CPU schedulers, I mean CPU processes as well as IBO bound processes. So these two processes, it will select randomly. This is something like you people are visiting to an interview. Okay, so some 1 lakh people came. So this 1 lakh people will comprises of BTech, MCA, MTech. All these people are eligible for that particular job. Okay, let us suppose you people are going for a government job. So what will happen? Everyone is eligible. It's not necessary that you should be a the student should be a BTech graduate. Any graduate is applicable. Suppose someone had did BSc, he is also possible. He is having a degree, right? He is also a graduate. He can also come there. So that is a separate kind of process. Now BTech students are going separate kind of process. Okay. Now MTech people are also coming there. So that is a separate kind of processes. So all these processes will be sitting in a one particular room. That room is what I'm talking about here is job queue. Now from there, based upon the requirement of the company, he will try to select the people. Like maybe he requires more people from BSc. Okay, the BSc background, he requires more people. BTech background, the second priority. MTech, last priority. So what he will do, from BSc, he will try to select some, okay, randomly he will pick. He will not again select. But randomly when he's picking up, he will pick around some 10 to 15 members. When he will come to BTech particular process, so what he will do, he will try to randomly pick around 2 or 3 members because he requires very few. Coming to MTech, he will select randomly one. How these are selected randomly means he will place something called as interview, written test. He will ask you to write a written test and based upon that he will pick up the candidates. Same way here also the scheduler will pick up the candidates or the processes from this particular job queue. It's very big in size. Okay, don't assume that we have only these slots. It's a very big in size. From this particular process, job queue, these processes are taken, and since you people are already ready for the interview and all, so he will dump. If you qualify the written exam, he will be removed from this job queue and he will be transferring into your ready queue. This is your ready queue. Means you are ready to face the interview, but the interviewer should be idle, should be in idle state so that he can conduct interview for you. He is already busy with other candidates for performing the interview. Okay, so here the CP is your what we call the interviewer who is going to interview you related to your particular placement. So that comes under here. So in ready queue, you people will be placed here. Few P1, P7, maybe P2, P10, something like this. Now, what do you mean by device queue? I already told you this is irrespective of your system. Here we have each and every device, your hardware device. If you talk about a printer, printer will have a queue. As I told you, printer will have 10 slots. Your normal Canon printer, if you talk about, it will have 10 means at a time 10 people can give printing. 10 people can at a time give the command called as printing. But internally, the system will execute one at a time and will provide you the output one at a time. But when giving the command, 10 people can give the command at a time. It has 10 slots, so that will be occupied one at a time. Like P1, like P3 gave next, next came P4, next came P2, next came P7, something like this. Okay. Here, when we are performing this, let us suppose the 11th person came until none of the print process has been taking place, means none process has been executed. So what will happen exactly here is the 11th process, whichever process is giving the command or the 11th person who is giving the command, he has to wait for at least one of the slot getting empty. Like P1 has executed, this slot got empty, this is shifted to the next one since it is a queue. Okay, push and pop concept. So this slot became empty, so P11 will come here. Okay, so P7, 2, 4, 3. P1 is already executing. Okay, so this is what is talking about in this particular device queue. So mostly these are the three device queues we actually use in our scenario. And here all these devices and every internal system will have its own pointers. How they are going to point it up, that we will see here. There is a diagram here related to that. So every queue will have a queue header, which actually consists of head and tail. Okay. Though coming to the head, it will point to the PCB. I think you people know what you mean by PCB, process control block. So it will head points to the first process control block, and the tail represents the last process control block what we have. Same way we have magnetic tape. So if you talk about your magnetic tapes, it's related to your hardware. That is nothing but device. Okay. Same way magnetic tape unit 1. So we have unit 0 unit. So this is a separate. This is a separate hardware, this is a separate. So both are having head and queue. So every device queue means every devices, every internal processes will have their own ready queues, and based on that ready queue, every header will have a head and a tail. A tail will point to the PCB. Now this particular PCB will have a linked list concept where the first PCB will point to the next PCB, next PCB to the next, and so on. This process keeps on repeating. This is what the whole terminology related to your queues. So we are going to place everything in a queue. Don't assume that tag and all. We'll be using only queues here. Now, so coming to here again, we discussed about ready queue and device queue. So he is explaining with a small example here how we are going to do that. I'll explain it. So as I told you initially, you have here something called as job queue. Okay, whatever the processes are getting generated in your system, we are going to place it in a job queue. From the job queue, the operating system will randomly pick up some processes and it will store it in a ready queue. From the ready queue, what happens? One by one, whichever the process is first, that process is allocated to the CPU. Now the CPU will, within the CPU, the process starts executing. Now during this execution, some processes might require some IBIO request. Some processes might create child processes and they wait until the child process completes execution. Or sometimes what happens, the process might be interrupted because a high priority process came. Like I am taking class right now, suddenly HOD sir came. So high priority process came. So what I need to do, I am ready to take the class, but I have an interrupted right now. Why? Because high priority process came. So he has to execute first. After he completes, then I will start executing it. Well, when I start executing again, will I start from the beginning or from where I have stopped? Obviously, we'll start from where I have stopped it, right? So that is what comes under this, wait for interrupt. Okay, that is what we call it as interrupt. Now here, this ready queue, CPU is given, IBIO requirements that will be transmitted to IBIO device. Since I told you that every device will have a queue here, this is a queue, and within this queue, maybe that particular device is already working on some other process. So your process will be stored in this queue. So whenever you get a turn, you will start performing the operation. Once your performance is completed, you will be again transmitted back to the ready queue. Same way time slice experiments in the earlier I explained about time sharing where every process is given 5 seconds. If the within the if 5 seconds completed, your task is not completed, you will be stored back again to this particular ready queue. But next time when you are allocated the CPU, you will start only from where you have stopped, not from the beginning. Okay. Fork a child is nothing but process has created a child process. The child is executing it. Once it is executed, again that particular parent process is transmitted to your ready queue. So he is waiting for its turn. Whenever he is getting the turn, he will complete the task and he will move out. Same way interrupt. As I told you, some interrupt high priority process came. So I will be interrupt has taken place here. So I will be transmitted back again to this particular queue. So whenever I get a chance of a CPU, I'll start executing it and just move out from this particular scenario. So this is the way whole your entire process is getting executed. This is the way exactly your multiple processes, in our system some hundreds of thousands or 10,000s of processes are getting executed. So how operating system is managing them, this is the whole scenario what we have. It's complicated, right? Now, coming to so this is nothing but the explanation of the previous diagram what we have. So here whatever I have explained there, that is what represented here. Next we have three scenarios. The process could issue an IBIO request. So whenever the process is given to the CPU, it might request for IBIO device to perform the operation. So that is what is representing here. Next we have something called it may create a child process as I shown you in the previous slide. So it may create a child process and it means the parent process will wait until the child is terminating. Once it is done, it is again transmitted back to the queue. From the queue, it is transmitted to the CPU. And the last one, but not the least, is some forcefully. Forcefully is nothing but high priority. Like I gave the example of a HOD sir. So HOD sir came, high priority process came. So I have been forcefully asked to stop the class because he wanted to deliver some message to you people. So that comes under this. So whatever we explained in the previous diagram, that is what represented in this particular slide. Okay. Yeah, next comes to the schedulers. So what type of schedulers we do have? Okay, now remember the previously what I explained, based on that we'll having schedulers here. First we discussed about job queues, right? Then we discussed about ready queues. So job queues, what it will contain, all the different type of processes, whatever we are creating will be stored in job queue. So for that we have this scheduler. So as I told you that some operating system will remove some processes from this job queue and store it into the ready queue, right? So who is going to select that? Operating system. So operating system by itself cannot do the functioning. So it requires someone. So that is nothing but here long-term scheduler. He is the one who is going to actually get the processes from this job queue and store the information. Okay, that's why we call this as long-term schedulers. Why long-term means at a time it will select few and it will store. Later on, after some time, it will again try to pick few processes. Okay, so that's why it is called long term. It takes a long time. Each and every time we are selecting the processes. And moreover, if you observe here, we also call it as a job scheduler. And how this job came is based upon this particular job queue. Okay, so it actually takes, since we are saying long term means it takes some long time to select the jobs at a time. Okay, this is something like a big crane which will try to take the mud at a time. Okay, and it will dump it up. So next time it will take some time. Then again it will come, it will dump, and it will take the mud from the ground and it will dump it somewhere else. Okay, but here long term means not very long time here. It's just a fraction of seconds or minutes. Okay, just a fraction of minutes. So each time it is selecting from this particular pool, the processes, it's around minutes. Maybe first 1 minute it will try to select. After 1 minute, again it will try to select. Again 1 minute it will try to select. That is what is representing in this long-term scheduler. Next we have something called as short-term scheduler. And I think you might have understood by this time, the short-term scheduler is with respect to your ready queue. Okay, we also call it as CPU scheduler. This will be present very close to the CPU. He is the one who will decide who will enter into that what we call from the ready queue to CPU, which process need to be allocated. So in the previous diagram we have seen it, right? We have a ready queue here and we have a CPU here. So from this ready queue, which process will enter into CPU is actually decided by this short term. Why we call it as short term means it actually works in milliseconds very fastly, because whichever process is allocated to the CPU, it will only execute for fraction of seconds. Okay, so fraction of seconds means maybe it may require some iBio device, immediately went to that particular iBio device queue. It may have completed its task within the second, so it is just removed from it. So it occurs very fastly. When how much fast means maybe milliseconds or nanoseconds. That's the reason we are calling it as short-term scheduler, and it is also called as CPU scheduler. So that is the difference. I think if people can now provide the differences between long-term scheduler and short-term. Long-term schedulers generally takes around minutes or seconds in order to perform the task. That's the reason we call it as a long-term. Short-term means it is in milliseconds time. Okay, and it occurs so frequently that we cannot understand which process is executing next. By the time you will say that this process is executing, CPU may be allocated with some other process. That much fast it will be executing it. That's the reason we call it as CPU scheduler. Long-term scheduler is called as job scheduler, and this is associated with job queue. Short-term scheduler is called as CPU scheduler, and it is associated with ready queue. Okay. Now, in the earlier few minutes back, I told you that processes will be of two types: CPU bound, iBio. Okay, so what do you mean by CPU bound is nothing but spending most of the time in iBio computation. Like I told you about example of a printer. So what happens in printer? In printer it will keep means that particular process will keep on printing. Okay, so what will happen? That process will spend most of the time in iBio device queue rather than CPU ready queue. So we have ready queue, right? And we have CPU device queue. So these processes will be spending most of the time in this particular device queue, not in the ready queue. Ready queue is associated with CPU. So most of the time it will be sitting in this particular queue rather than this particular queue. But whereas coming to CPU bound process, it will spend most of the time in ready queue, but not in the device queue. So here remember, operating system must very carefully select this iBio bound process and CPU bound process. If let us suppose the operating system has selected all the CPU bound process, no iBio bound process, then what will happen? So your CPU is busy in executing it. What about your printer? it will be sitting idle. The printer is not doing any work. Why? We have selected all the processes which are respective to our CPU execution, no printer execution. But if you people are selecting all the CPU, I mean processes with respect to IBO, like printer. So what will happen? The printer will be busy and keep on printing the document. Then what about CPU? CPU will be sitting in an idle state. So this is not a good practice. So the operating system should make sure from this particular job queue, it selects few IBO bound process and few CPU bound process. That is what the whole scenario related to your schedulers. Okay, so just revise it up. So we have only two schedulers. Okay, actually we have one more. I'll talk about that in the next slide. So here only we have a long-term scheduler and short-term scheduler. So based on this, we are actually performing it. Okay, so short-term scheduler is called a CPU scheduler. This is good for your online bits. You can remember it. And long-term scheduler is for job scheduling. And moreover, this long-term scheduler is used for controlling the degree of multi-programming. Means the number of processes getting created, the number of processes getting executed will be parallel. That controlling is actually done by this long-term scheduler. This is not something like the number of processes getting executed is less, but the number of processes getting created is more. If more processes are created, less processes are getting executed. That means the operating system is getting overloaded. Your system, your hardware is getting overloaded. So what will happen if there is an overload? Finally, it will crash. So we have this long-term scheduler makes sure this kind of situation does not occur in the system. That is the role of your long-term scheduler. Yeah, apart from these two, we also have something called as medium-term scheduler. So what is the main purpose of this medium-term scheduler is, as I told you that whenever a process is already executing it and due to some interrupt or due to some IBO device request, that process we are removing and storing it in that particular queue, maybe a device queue, or we are storing it back in a ready queue, right? In the previous diagrams, we have seen it. Okay, I'll just show you the diagram so that you can understand. Yeah, this diagram I'm talking about. Suppose some interrupt came. I am ready to perform the task. So I gave an example of a HOD sir and me taking a class. So I am ready to take the class, but due to HOD sir came in between, I will be sent back again to the ready queue. Or maybe I want some projectors. Okay, so when I'm asking for a projector, the projector has to be brought by the seer to the class. So during this session, what I'm doing, we people are sitting idle. I'm a process, I'm not doing anything. I'm waiting for getting the projector, getting it installed, and then I'll start the process. Once the projector is ready, you people are ready, then I'll start taking the class. So that thing, so here this is what we call I by AQ. So here that is what it's saying. So in medium term scheduler, what is saying, whenever this particular thing happens, like HOD sir came, the class is interrupted, now sir has delivered some message to you. When he goes back, I will take up the class. Now, will I will start from the beginning? No. From where I will start? From the place from where I have stopped it. So here, till what extent I have already explained you people the concept that should be stored somewhere in our system, right? Or sometimes usually, when we are interrupted, I usually ask you people, okay, where did we stop? What happened here? I don't remember exactly where. So you people remember in your mind. So in your memory, you're storing the information. Okay, this point sir has explained. You will say, okay, sir, this is the topic where we were stopped. So from here we need to start. Same way in our system, in our lapis and personal computer, so whenever a process is interrupted, that particular process should be placed back again in your memory. But before doing that, we need to store that information till how much extent it has completed, till what extent he has performed the task, okay, what are the resources he was accessing during that time, all that information. Now, where we are going to store that information? Nothing but your PCB. As we already discussed, every process will have a PCB and this will keep on updating. Now, this will contain the information. So here medium term scheduler task is, so here this is a queue, this is your system. The main task of medium term scheduler is performing swapping. This is a memory. From the memory, that is nothing but your queue. From the queue, one process is allocated here. He performs some task and we are removing it. Okay, so we are again storing back that particular process here. But when we are storing this, whatever the task he has completed till that extent will be stored in his PCB. Then again, whenever this particular, so next process we will look at, that is nothing but P2. Now this process will get a turn after some time. Now when we are allocating this to particular system, first the operating system will check the PCB related to this particular process. Okay, where did he stop? Now from that point, it will start executing the remaining tasks. Okay, so this is the way whole thing execute. So here the medium term scheduler, what it is doing is swapping. The term what we use here is swapping. So what we are doing, P1 is swapped and P2 we have stored here. So after some time, P2 will be coming here, P1 will be transferred. What we are doing, we are simply swapping up the values, okay, swapping up the processes. So for that, we are using this medium term scheduler. How we are doing, we have a beautiful example here, a diagram. If people can go through it, this one, yeah, you can understand this very nicely. So from the job queue, okay, remember there will be a job queue that we are not representing it. From the job queue, the process, one of the processes selected, given it to the ready queue. From the ready queue, it is allocated to CPU. Now what happened, as I told, maybe if that particular process is waiting for some I by a device to complete it task, it will come to the right side. So it will enter into that device, like I want to print something, that process want to print something, so it will come into your printing queue. So this is a IBA printing queue. Okay, so from here it will perform the task and again it will be transmitted back to ready queue. In case some interrupt comes up, like I told you, HOD sir came, so in that case whatever I was explaining, it should be swapped out from this CPU. Okay, that has to be removed from this particular CPU, that we are calling it as swap out. From here I am allocating that to this particular, this is another queue. Okay, partially executed swapped out processes will be placed here. So once I get the turn again, means HOD has completed its task, so I got the chance again. So we call it as swap in. Again, I will come back to ready queue. I'll wait for the turn. As soon as I'm getting the turn, I'll get the CPU, I'll perform it and just completing that whole scenario. So this is the way how the medium term actually works. The main concept of what we call medium term scheduler is swapping in, swapping out. Okay, swap in and swap out. This is the one which is done by your medium term scheduler. So remember, there are only three schedulers we do have. One is a long-term scheduler, next short-term scheduler, medium-term scheduler. So long-term scheduler is what we call it as job schedulers, okay? Because it gets the processes from a job queue. Whereas coming to short-term, we call it as a CPU scheduler because it allocates the processes from this particular ready queue to this CPU. So here we will have short-term scheduler. Okay, short-term scheduler is from here, and since we have a job queue here, so here we have a long-term scheduler. What about medium? This is this swap in and swap out. Here we have medium-term scheduler, and most of the operating system like your Windows and Linux don't have this particular concept called LTS. They don't use this. Directly they have short-term schedulers and medium-term schedulers. So whatever the process is coming, they will not store in this queue. They'll directly store in a ready queue. Okay, so that is what's been explained in this particular slide. So I hope it is very clear for you people regarding this scheduler. This is most important. Now let us come across the different operations and process what we can perform. Very easy these two are. So only two different type of operations we can perform on a process. That is nothing but process creation and process termination. So let us discuss how we can create, and here I will be showing you people few programs how we exactly use system calls in order to create a process or in order to terminate a process. Let's see those examples in the coming slide. So coming to the processes, let's discuss about here. So since we said process creation, as I told you that a particular process, any process can create additional processes, and that process can create additional sub processes. So the whichever the process, okay, let us suppose, I'll explain with the example. I have process P1. Now this process P1 create as many more processes as it wants, like P11, P12, P13. I have another process P1, P2. So this process can also create as many processes as it wants. P21, P22, and P23. Now what happened here? Since this process has created these processes, all these processes will be working under P1. Now this process is what we call it as a parent process. parent process. Okay, I think you might have understood till now. So what about these processes? What we call them? So this we call it as child process. Now, remember, every process can create as many processes as it wants. Okay, so whichever process is creating it, we call it as a parent process. Whichever process is getting created, that we call it as a child process. And remember, this is a child, fine. Well, this P11 can again, if possible, if it wants, it can create its own child process. P111, P112. P113. Okay. So if you observe here, say with P21. So P2, sorry, 121. P122. P123. So on. Now if you observe here, P1 is the parent process who is handling these as a child process. But if you talk about this particular scenario, this particular scenario, here P11 is the parent process and these are the child process with respect to that particular process. So in this way, these processes can keep on creating multiple child processes and they can perform operations. But as you can observe here, this has taken a format of a hierarchy. Like it has created in a format of a tree, isn't it? So this became a tree. Now this is creating another tree like this. So what happened now? This is creating another tree. So this became something like what we call a tree kind of structure. Okay. So in this way, we actually represent the process creation. Okay. So which will have a parent process and a child process. So how these people are going to determine every process, parent process will have a ID. How we can determine? We have like we people like students. Every student is having a roll number. So based on the roll numbers, we are able to identify that particular person. Like every faculty is having a ID. Based on the ID, they will determine which faculty is from which particular department. Same way, every process will have a ID. This process is creating a child process. So this process will have its own ID. And that is associated with this something. This P11 is nothing but ID here. P1. So this one is nothing but process one. One is the ID. P11 means process one, child process, first process. Okay. Process one, child, second process. Process one, third child process. In this way, we are representing. So every process is represented in this particular format. Okay. Now comes the scenario. Okay, I have created a process here. So we do have a process here. So he has created some child process P1, P2, P3. Now the question comes, how the resources are shared here. Something like let us take a natural example. So our parents have two children. Okay, let us suppose your parents have two children, you and your sister or your brother. Now what happens after when the parents get aged up, their property will come to you, right? So that is one scenario. So how that since there are two children here, how the property will be shared? That will be shared equally. That is one kind of sharing of the resources. There is other kind of sharing also in this operating system. Okay, same way the first one what I said is nothing but this process is having some resources. Let us suppose we have 12 MB of resource. Okay, I'm just explaining for your understanding sake. Okay, so just understand this. 12 MB of resources this particular process is having. He has created three different processes. So each one will be getting how much? Let us suppose 4 MB. 4 MB. So, remember, it's not that equally we need to share. It will be decided by this particular process, the parent process, who should get how much of share. But mostly we try to equally share among all the three child processes. Okay. There is another possibility, like this process has created three processes. Now he is having 12 MB of memory assets, right? So in the first case, that memory is shared among these three. In the other case, this memory will not be shared to this particular process. Rather, the operating system will provide some resources to this particular processes, like 2 MB, 5 MB, or like 10 MB, depending upon the requirement. This is the second case where the operating system will provide the resources. But as I told you that a process can create multiple processes, there is no limit. In that case, If the operating system keep on giving like this the memory or the resources, finally the operating system will not have any resources to manage the other processes. It's very typical. So that's why the first concept is the one which is mostly used. Okay, this is something like a person is having two children. The government is giving resources to him, something like plots. Okay, if the land is given by the government, if a family has two children, the two children will be given a land by the government, not by the parents. Parents will have their own property. Okay, this is something like that. So what will happen as the population keeps on increasing? A day will come and government will not be able to provide any land to any of the children, right? So it's highly typical. So that's the reason they follow the first one. What is that? Whatever the parent is having property, that only has to be shared among their children. So same concept is actually this concept has been come from the natural way. So looking at the natural in nature how it is working, based on that only this operating system has been designed. Okay, so that is the concept related to your sharing. So the first concept is the one which is used rather than the second one. Okay, so here now what about the execution? Next comes here something called as execution. Now how this has to be executed? Since we are creating a process here, he is creating some two different processes. Now there are two scenarios how we can do. First, whenever this process is creating this child process, they can execute the task. The parent can wait. Okay, parent will not execute. The parent will wait for this P1 and P2 to complete their task. Once they are completing it, then he will start executing it. That is the first scenario. There is another scenario too. The second scenario is he will give the task to P1 and P2 to do it. Parallelly, he will also do some other task. This is something like, your parent might have asked you to do some task. Along with you, he is also doing some other task so that the work can be completed very fastly. That is one process. Second process is he may ask you people to do some kind of event or task, and once that is completed, then he will start executing his work. That is what comes under the second scenario. So either the parent and the child can execute at a time, or the parent may wait until the child is completing its execution and terminating. So these are the two scenarios we do have with respect to your process creation. I hope it is very much clear. So we have a small diagram here. So whatever I've explained, this is the diagram. This is the diagram of your Linux operating system. So the first one is, this is what we call as the root, or we can also call it as the parent process. Now this process has created three different children. Okay, for its execution. If you remember here, PID is 1. So what is the ID of this particular root node is nothing but 1. Now he has created three different types of child processes: login, kthread, SSH thread. This is nothing but a secure shell. Okay, it is represented like that. Now each one, if you remember, there are threads. Now remember here, this process is having own ID, this is having own ID, this. So all these three belongs to this. This login will take care of this particular child process, will take care of the users who are getting login to that particular system. Whereas coming to these two, they will take care of other kind of activities. Okay, so that is what doing. So here K thread, what is doing? He is creating a new process, 2122. He has created two different processes so that he can make the work easier. Task. Same way, whereas coming to SSHT, he is also creating one. He has created only one thread. Okay, one child process, and this is indirectly creating another child. So this is something like this is one na. So this is 1 3. So okay, fine. We'll write it as 3 only. So this is like 3 1. This is like 3 1 1. Okay, so based on this, so if you look at it, this is a hierarchy tree representation what we are seeing here. Remember one more point: when we are executing this, whenever we are going to execute this particular program, uh, whenever the process child parent process is executing, we will get the own ID. But whenever we are executing the login child process, the ID what we the return address will be 0 for the child process. Okay, but whereas coming to the return address of the parent process will be a integer number, that is nothing but the ID of that particular process. Please keep mind note in that. That is what main important here. Whenever we people are executing the program, the parent process will return an address which is an integer in nature. Okay, integer type. So that will be having some value greater than 0. But whereas coming to the return value of your child process will be 0. It will have a login ID. I'm talking about return values. What is the return value of this particular login child process with? It will be represented as 0. But remember, there will not be any value less than 0. If any value you are having less than 0 for a process, that means that process is not created. There is some kind of error. We are not able to create a child process. So that is what represented here. I'll show you with the help of a small program so that you people can understand here. Okay, this is the process creation. How we can create the process? In simple terms, fork and exec. Fork is the system call used in Linux in order to create a child process. Exe is used to execute that child process, okay, based upon whatever the task given by the parent process. So these two we are going to see in our coming program. Okay, we are just keeping it up. Yeah, so this is the diagrammatic way. So fork. So what happens here? The parent process will initiate fork here. So what will happen after the initiating fork? A child will be created here. The parent will wait for the child to perform its execution. What the child is going to do, he is going to call the exec system call. So what it will have is whatever the task the parent has given to the child, that is getting executed using exec. Once this particular child completes its execution, it will go to exit and it will terminate it. Then it will directly go to the wait. So in the meantime, what happens? He will initiate, means the child will send the information to the parent saying that I have completed the task. Now what the parent is going to do, he is waiting till that time. So as soon as he is getting the response, he will directly resume the thing. Means he will start processing it, he will start executing it, and finally he will come out of that particular thing. So that particular process will complete execution. Okay, so here I'll just explain with a small program. This is your program written in your Unix, a simple C program it is. You people can understand here. Now, if you look at these three, stdio.h is the package you people might have understood now. We are discussing the earlier how that library package is used. So uni, std and sys by type. You are seeing this sys by type. So from here we will get all the different type of system calls. Right now we are using system calls here. First one is we are what exactly this program is. We are creating a child process now. Okay, so PID underscore T PID is nothing but the ID for the child process. This is a variable and this is the syntax default like we use int, right? Int, char, float. Same way PID underscore 2 is the default provided. Now from where this is coming from this particular system called sys by type dot h. So how we can create a child? I told you using fork. So PID equal to fork. Now this fork will return the ID of that particular process. Now, if the PID is less than 0, as I told you that process ID will never be less than 0. If it is 0, definitely fork has failed. Means a new process is not being created. So that is what we are printing here. Printf fork fail. Means the system is not able to create the child process. Next what we have is in case if the process ID is equal to 0. What did I say? The return address of a child is 0, isn't it? If the PID we get 0, that means the child is created. So when it is created, what it has to do? It has to execute execlp. Well, actually, this is one of the family member of exec. So in the previous slide, we have seen it. So this is one of the family member of it. So it is asking you to print this command and represent the list of all the processes which are present in the system. Okay, well, this commands you people will be executing in your Unix and shell programming commands. Okay, so Unix and shell programming, when you people will be doing the what we call lab sessions, then you will be using this command, ls command. We have ls command. Okay, using this, you'll get the list of all the processes within a particular file. So that is what he is doing here. Okay, so and whereas coming to the last one, the last else part, if you look at here, what is saying is wait null. So what the parent is doing in the previous slide, what the parent was doing after calling or creating the child process, he was calling wait. Means he is waiting for the child process to terminate. Once it is terminated, we are printing child completed. So once it is terminated, then the parent will start executing and finally it will come out of that particular part. Means it has completed the execution and it is coming out. So that is what we are returning here, 0. Okay, is it clear? It's very easy to understand. So whatever the system calls we have used, what are the system calls we use? We have used fork. We have used something called fprintf. This is a system call. Remember, file printf. We are printing a file here. ESCC, this is a system call. From where all these three are coming up, these three, even wait is a system call. All four are coming up from this particular header file called sysbytype.h. Okay, from here we are executing. If you have any doubts, you can ask me later. Now, same way, we people can write programs in your what we call C programming. In your Windows. Now, this is a program related to your Windows here. In short, I'll explain it. So, in Windows, we have something called Windows.h. This will contain all the system calls what we are going to do. So, in Windows, already we have seen in the previous session how to create a process means nothing but we have a terminology called create process. You might have seen it, Windows and Linux. So, here create process. But remember, this create process will use 10 parameters. 10 parameters. In the previous slide, the fork will not use any kind of parameter. Simply you will call fork, automatically it will get executed. But whereas coming to create process, we will be using 10 default parameters. Among them, the first one is what you want to execute. Now in this program, what they are doing is they wanted to open a MS Paint and start performing some operation. So they are giving mspaint.exe. So they are executing MS Paint. Means when you are running this program, automatically you will get the output as MS Paint window. Okay. So in that, if you can draw any kind of diagram, that is what is executing here. Apart from that, you might have seen here, these all are 9 different parameters. This is the first parameter. The remaining are 9 parameters which have been used. Now these parameters are used for different purposes like threads. We have threads, right? For threads, for resources. So since we might be using some kind of resources, all those resources, so all that information. Okay, the values, whatever we are representing here are default values. Right now, we don't want any kind of values. Well, in the what we call in the comments, he has already provided you. You people can go through this. Like inheriting process handle threads for handling threads, we are using this. Same way for inheritance. If people are using inheritance concepts, then we can use. So if inheritance is there, we can call it as true. If no inheritance, false. So are you creating any kind of flag? Is there a parent environment or a parent existing directory? So that is represented here. This is the whole scenario. Okay. So this way it is creating. Remaining is same like your previous one. So if that is not created, process fail, return -1. If process is created, the parent process will wait. So there we have used the system call called as wait. But here we need to use wait for single object. Okay. And in this we need to give the parameters. Based on that, when the child completes, we need to close that channel, close handle, close handle. What we need to close, that H process and H thread. So what are the threads are associated with this particular program, and how many processes we have created, all those processes need to be terminated. Whereas coming to Linux, we don't have to write any code for terminating a child process. Automatically it will get terminated. But whereas coming to your Windows, definitely we need to create this. Okay, so this is what he is explaining in this particular concept. You people can go through it. Okay, finally we have something called as termination. So in termination, we have something called, okay, in short, I'll explain it. We have a system call, we have terminology called exit system call. So using exit system call, we are going to perform the operation. Okay, so remaining is same. Wait already explained you people. So you people can just go through this. It's very easy. So there are three possibilities existing here. The child may be, so whenever child process is terminated, it may have three possibilities. First one, the child is trying to access the more property than usual. Whatever is allocated to that, apart from that it is trying to access, the child will be terminated. Another possibility is the parent is terminated. If the parent is terminated, what will happen? Automatically the child will get disconnected or terminated by the operating system. Because the parent should exist, then only the child can execute. Or whatever the task is assigned to the child process is no longer required, then automatically we can terminate. So these are the three possibilities what we do have. Now this is the example related to your operating system, Chrome. So as I told you, we have a Chrome here. So each one is individual tab is a separate process. The entire Chrome is your parent process. Okay. So based on this, the entire task is getting executed. Browser, render, sandbox. Browser will actually make sure that all the tabs are working properly. Render is nothing but individual tabs, making sure whatever you people are accessing using that particular tab, that is getting executed. Same way, sandbox, making sure all the networks are getting connected, means all the networks, you people might have called gmail.com in that tab. So the Gmail file is coming. So the network is correctly functioning or not. whatever the resources you people are asking, that is taken care by this particular sandbox. You people just go through this in your textbook. It's very easy. You can understand easily. Okay, this is the whole scenario related to your today's topic. Okay, thank you for watching.